Hello everyone and welcome to yet another exciting episode about the Startup.Tampere Podcast. Today is a very specific topic and I'm very excited to be hearing today and having the opportunity to discuss with our guest about the current Tampere Startup Survey from last year, and we will hear some insights about where the startup scene is currently situated in Tampere, how things are moving on or moving backwards, a little bit about technologies, future development steps, and maybe to hear some comparison points also to other cities in Finland. So I'm very excited about this opportunity to have this discussion today with our dear guest, Tommi Uitti. Please welcome Tommi Uitti to the stage.
Yeah, thanks a lot. It's fun to be here again. It was about 1 year ago I was here with the last study. Maybe to introduce myself quickly.
Please go ahead, sir.
For the ones who don't know me. My name is Tommi Uitti. I've been working for the startup ecosystem activities for 10 years, and for different roles. Just to very quickly mention that I was working for public sector a few years back. Then I have been working more as an independent consultant and researcher and developer. So many roles, checking a lot of data and facts about the ecosystem level. I've been conducting startup studies all over Finland, basically, I could say 6 cities included. But I could always say that even though I view this ecosystem from the top level, the macro level, I would still like to argue that I have my other foot on the ground, so to say, that I really love to talk with the founders, entrepreneurs. I think they are the true heroes of this nation. Always get to know their current challenges and situations. So combining, maybe even in this discussion, I'm combining my views of the studies, but also giving some of my personal views on the micro level of the entrepreneur's perspective.
That's excellent, Tommi, because indeed you have been conducting this survey for quite a few years now. You have been scaling it up to different cities as well, and your sort of background in this ecosystem for a long time. I think you have a very good sort of first sight view, both from the ground perspective, but also from a bird's eye view throughout your study and been collaborating with you in several instances, knowing your passion and devotion for supporting the entrepreneurs, and I think you are the perfect guest for the episode today. So thank you, Tommi, for joining us. Starting a little bit, I would like to start with a bang this time. Tommi, give me something that makes you particularly interested, or what makes the survey for this year unique? What's your kind of own intake? What is there the key thing that we will follow through this discussion?
I think there are a lot of points maybe, and anybody can take their own takeouts from the study. Please read it and analyze it yourself. I think the perception can vary from one person to another. Personally speaking, I think it's exciting to do these studies in a continuous loop. So this is basically already with Tampere now, thanks for the partnership. It's been longitudinal study. So basically we've been able to check the same metrics, to measure the same figures already for many years, at least for 3 years that we now reported. And you can see some development. So as you say, like in your opening intro, that like where Tampere is heading at. So basically, I'm excited to provide that information. You can see different curves, different developments, but maybe like one key take could be that anybody could consider is that Tampere is clearly a mature ecosystem, technology heavy. We have a different variety of technologies, very B2B focused. Also, deep tech is very prevalent, but and let's say companies are being established, companies are growing, but maybe something which is a bit of a question mark, that how much is the scaling happening as we speak. And again, when I say like this, obviously there are companies who are scaling, but this is a generalization. This is based on the data set. So I'm making maybe some of the statements here that they are more in the question form, that this seems to be that there is maybe something which is maybe giving some factors to the growth that the the growth of international scaling is not happening maybe as fast as we would like to have.
So maybe that is kind of a greeting to all the founders and the entrepreneurs, but equally to the investors and different ecosystem stakeholders to think about how we could best support the growing of those startup companies in Tampere. Tommi, in the this year's survey, you identified, or you and your team identified 192 active startups. Roughly 28 new startups was founded in 2025. What does this number tell us about our kind of like our ecosystem maturity, and how would you say that this compares to the current national trends?
Yeah. A few words about the definition of startup in this study. So basically, we only include the startups who are less than 10 years old and also having less than 50 employees, 50 employees. So basically, quite young and early stage startups. You could always argue, obviously, that there are startups who have already grown over that definition. Also in Tampere, we see a lot of good growth stories, which is great. But when we check on this focus, so the birth rate is really fine. You can see that at least the ecosystem is keeping at its size. Relatively speaking, because again, when we are comparing to the national level trends, unfortunately, I'm not really happy, even though I'm smiling here, but like I'm not happy to say per se that what's been happening with the startup ecosystem, especially with the young startups over the last years. In whole Finland, the level, the amount of startups in Finland has been on decline, but Tampere hasn't been. So that's the positive. Like even though the major trend is that there are less startups being born every year in Finland, on the contrary to the hype and the media exposure, which is probably more than ever for startups nowadays, but the numbers are less, unfortunately. But in Tampere, we've been able to keep up, I would say. So the numbers are fine. And again, when checking with comparing to other regions, so obviously Tampere is the second biggest startup hub in whole Finland. So Tampere is doing fine.
That's good to hear, Tommi. And if you think about the current landscape, so what drivers and conditions are driving sort of the startup formation and startup scene in Tampere? Do you have any sort of like what kind of like a rough idea or an estimate based on the data you've been working with?
Yeah, we are checking it actually with several metrics. Most of the startups, let's quickly recap like how the startups are being born. So basically, most of the startups, 2/3 of them, basically they create it with their own idea, quite independently. And this is also sometimes a bit surprise for the ones who are working with the ecosystem that the structures, the support systems, the programs, all of those services maybe don't seem so prevalent in this respect. Obviously, I don't mean to say that most of the startups are probably looking for some level of public funding, but that's actually not included into that metrics. But then, like where the startups are really coming from otherwise, the university is really strong, obviously. The research-backed, research-originated companies are of high quality, maybe not as of high numbers, but again, when we see them getting established and getting to grow, we can see actually from this longitudinal study now that actually those deep tech type of research-backed companies, they are growing faster than of your average startup. And then, what could I say? I would actually just want to mention that Tampere entrepreneurs who get into the startup space are really seasoned. They are serial entrepreneurs, actually. We have also a metric that which we ask that if you have at least one person who has serial entrepreneurship status, basically has established a company before and now is going for the second round or any further rounds of establishing a company. So basically, of those persons, we have of 2/3 again of the companies have at least one serial entrepreneur, and that's really high. That means there's a lot of competencies, a lot of learnings from the previous rounds, and how we could accumulate actually that learning. Hopefully, if even for the new companies to merge, like how to maybe get even those competencies to be spread out for the whole ecosystem. That's maybe a good question actually to ask.
And jumping along and tagging along on that topic, also shows that the high level of serial entrepreneurs in the ecosystem or forming new startup companies, they might bring important value and expertise and know-how from previous attempts to build a startup that might have actually been formed from some of the programs or pre-accelerators or mindset type of services. Yeah. So we don't always even know all these things. And of course, your study or your survey can't sort of cover everything, but it also goes to somehow show that there might be these connections and these sort of support services and mechanisms might actually play quite a quintessential role still in the ecosystem. And another thing that I would like to sort of point out was that you mentioned something about the importance of what we see in longitude perspective now, that we have some of these research to business projects that have spun out from the university, and they actually are growing, and they are doing quite well. And going kind of like a shout out to some of the previous episodes when we have from the innovation services from the university, Johan Henna, and going to show that the important work that innovation services does with the companies but all the others as well at the university, professors to all kinds of founders who support the research-based companies to grow and first be established and then grow. This important work is shown in your data. Yeah, and that's kind of ecosystem topic, and I find that very interesting.
That is, and actually to get the validity for the data that we have been able to be track with the same companies for several years. Again, even with the serial entrepreneurs, the companies who have at least one serial entrepreneur, they are again growing faster than the companies who don't have the serial entrepreneurs.
There you go.
And that's obviously, everybody could say that, it's quite an obvious observation, yes, but now we have been able to back it up with the data. And again, like to take that idea further, like in our society, we are many times saying that, yes, we would need more entrepreneurs for a society to get more vibrant, to get more economic development. That's a clear argument you hear many times. I would like to add up, we need more serial entrepreneurs, right? So if you are a first-time founder and you're not managing it, hey, please don't quit the game completely. You should get back to the game. At least the statistics are on your side. Yeah. You are a better entrepreneur, even though you might feel that you are a failure. But actually, no, you should get another round. Your probability for chance of getting it bigger is kind of higher. So from that perspective, and then again, actually, even just talked with the people from the university. They were really curious also about the results, how it's laid out of their role in the ecosystem. And again, the data proves, as you said, the companies who are research-backed, they are, again, managing better. They are growing faster, even significantly faster. So again, that should be an incentive for business-curious researchers to start thinking about it. And even I would say that even the young researchers who are still paving their way forward, like which type of research field they really want to get into. So hopefully they could start experimenting in the minds also some business ideas, like they are not contradictory. Research and business, they are definitely not contradictory. And I would also say that it's not only from research to business type of a process. It's you can have combinatory thinking. You can start thinking also some business related issues while you are making the research. That I would also actually like to give as a mental challenge for every researcher out there.
I think it's a fantastic call to action, Tommi, to encourage the serial entrepreneurs to get the skin in the game, get back in the game, even if you have some failed attempts. That those lessons are learned and they are valuable input and know-how in future endeavors. But could you imagine, Tommi, the magic that would happen if we would have some of these young bright scholars focusing on the research to business area and combined with some of these serial entrepreneurs and making the next sort of startups together? That could be something interesting to see in the near future. Tommi, just have to check. We are very curious about some of the industry verticals in Tampere. How would you describe, in your words, the current sort of vertical landscape? What do we see? What is growing? What is perhaps on a decline? Maybe something about the technological solutions that the startups are currently using. Those ones who haven't seen the survey yet or the results, they will be available through Startup.Tampere. But the point is that what we see there is, for example, the rise of AI. You can clearly see it on so many different levels. But I will let the expert do the commenting on that sort of things. But I'm very curious about a little bit about the industry vertical landscape in Tampere.
Yeah, sure. Furthermore, we need to talk about the very dominant sector, which is obviously the software startups. We have not divided into any subsectors, so basically we have had all of them to be counted together there. But like when analyzing it further, so basically you can see the rise of AI. But again, it's not only coming for the very classical software startups. The software startups are more and more AI powered, but you can see that AI is clearly at Tampere. And that's why I say that Tampere is a mature technology ecosystem, because you can see that we have the variety of deep tech sectors, B2B, industrial sectors prevalent. But AI is being adopted in those fields as we speak. So it's not only like AI hype, but getting AI into products and processes, B2B industrial processes. That's being explored. And I don't know if it's like a weak signal or like clear signal, but at least you can have that kind of interpretation there. And yeah, that should be a really promising sign. Then it means that the technology is not its hype cycle only, but it's in the adoption level already. And then about some other points, maybe about the industries. Unfortunately, I need to say it out loud, but at least the amount of gaming companies has been a little bit on decline. Hopefully that could be the wave could be turned the other way around.
But that what I understood that this is also part of you can see this overall.
These are quite national trends as well. So I would not say that this is only Tampere specific, especially about the gaming sector. You could say.
You mentioned something about the might be whether it's a weak signal or some sort of a signal. If you look at if you would be, for example, an investor and you would be looking into startup companies in Tampere. Or you are your potential client looking for startup solutions. So what sort of technologies should we pay attention to? What should be what does Tampere have to offer? Some of the key insights that you have there.
Yeah, and again, even of the technologies, like it's always a good question, like whether you speak about industries or technologies. But okay, we are a little bit mixing in this discussion. Probably it's fine. So obviously Tampere is strong also in health and medical sector. So we can see a healthy amount of startups coming from that field as well. So if you really wanted to maybe mention, like let's say top 3 strong sectors from Tampere. So software startups with AI, with SaaS models, then medtech, health tech, all of those combined. And then I would still say that the third sector, maybe not only numbers, but again of the gravity, is the deep tech, clearly, like all of the deep tech fields. And then I'm not start to count all of the deep tech sectors which are there, but there are so many different research-based, research-backed spearheads which Tampere University provides through the research, and there are individual teams on almost any of the spearhead sectors of Tampere University coming as spin-offs or startups. As said, like the numbers are not maybe that huge, at least per year, but again, the gravity, the potential for growth, as we have seen over the years, is tremendous. And I would really want to pay attention to those. And this is always the debate and discussion that you can enter with startups, that if it's about the numbers or the quality. And lately, actually, discussion has been even more turning to that direction, that even if I say that even in whole Finland, the amount of startups has been on decline. But the counter arguments, usually what I hear is that actually the quality of the startups, the maturity of the startups has been on the rise. And there you could even make an argument that because startup ecosystems have been in Finland for almost, let's say, 15, 20 years, we have had this kind of ecosystem, and we have had the cycles, the serial entrepreneurs making many rounds. So maybe we could argue there is an accumulation of information and knowledge how to do startups that has been already coming to accumulate to the ecosystems. And this is maybe the point also in Tampere, we could say that our founders and entrepreneurs are quite well backed up already by their competence and knowledge base.
That's Tommi. That's a very, very insightful sort of perspective on things. Even though we see a decline in the numbers, there might be happening some good stuff on the quality side of things, and I think your survey also goes to show that, and I think it's excellent to see that, and something that of course we care about and we think about in the Startup.Tampere ecosystem is at kind of to analyze and understand in what stages are our current Tampere startups operating. So can you tell us something about the funding maturity of Tampere-based companies?
Yeah, Tampere is actually quite healthily divided. Like when we think of the funding rounds, pre-seed, seed rounds, Series A, each of them are actually on quite an equal allocation there. We have also been actually checking that whether startups like per revenue or per funding stage like get stuck in a certain level or in a certain stage. Like we have not been able to observe that really much. So as I said right in the beginning, Tampere startups are being born in a healthy way. They get to the market actually quite nicely. Over 50% of Tampere active startups, of these young early stage startups, they are already making revenue. So which is very good. And this is also actually, which is many times requested of startups that, or somebody might be a bit critical that no startup is making any revenue. They're just all pre-revenue waiting for investors to come to save them. So now, at least with Tampere startups, you can clearly say that majority of them are already on the market. And yeah, something which was quite peculiar as well is that we have actually a healthy amount. It was about 15% of all startups studied in here, of the total population number that are seeking for Series A funding. And that's already a growth funding stage. So basically we are expecting, okay, not everybody maybe will make the funding round, maybe not everybody can meet the growth targets, but at least the ambition level is good and the companies are growing. Now it's only, let's say, the matter of time that which companies will make the funding round, will break to the international markets. Yeah, I'm not the one able to predict like which companies or like, but even though I know a lot and I kind of try to give some interpretation, but yeah, I cannot say like how it will turn out, but let's say it looks promising to my eye.
And of course, the timing might be of essence here, and it's really difficult to forecast the market, how different mega trends will shift, the balances, checks and balances between the different, whether we're talking about industries or technologies.
Yeah.
For example, we have this interesting situation in a sense that it feels like, at least from the point of view that I've been looking at startups or companies, SMEs particularly in general, is the decline of how sort of, let's say, sustainable economy related startups have difficult times. Gaming companies might have difficult times. But then on the other side, there has been a tremendous rise in startups going for the kind of either for the defense or safety technologies, let alone dual use, which is a complex term of its own. But the point, and I think your survey also shows this, and would you mind to share us a few thoughts on that?
Yeah, sure. It's nice actually that you brought it up. I also wanted to talk about it. So basically, again, coming back to the technologies and the new trends rising. So we can see of our data that, as said, the term we use, dual use, in our survey study, that it's been really on the rise. Basically, 12% of the companies studied here reported that they are somehow developing dual-use solutions. So yeah, I would say it's a quite a shift. Okay, we have a little obscurity, like what was the number before, because actually we even didn't have the dual-use option actually as its own before. But like I would still argue that it clearly shows the change in our society. It's not only, again, media which is speaking about this one. We can clearly see it's in the behavior of startups. And again, maybe like one argument of this when we're making some predictions. So basically, yes, I can draw my ideas from the study and from my own perspectives. But again, I could say that here could be any of investor, and they could give also a lot of predictions because they are still meeting those companies. They are doing a lot of hard questioning with the companies and just checking their checks and balances inside out. I don't have that information. I have the survey data, which is let's say a bit more superficial maybe. But the thing is still that I think that there's a lot of value on the study, that actually this is still made fully public. This information is public for all the stakeholders. Actually, a lot of investors have been also asking some information about this study, or they have been saying that this is a good outline of the ecosystem, that they see the full picture, and they can also, then they can do their own operations and dive deeper. And that's actually what I would hope as well, to the companies to, even more VC companies to have their eyes on Tampere startups, especially for those ones who are looking for Series A funding. We have a lot of those guys, so yeah, you should come to check out.
That's a good shout out for all the investor landscape, Tommi. Well, if it just quickly go back a little bit to the funding stages, I would also like to ask you something a little bit. How does the distribution of the early stage and later stage funding situation in Tampere indicate? What I mean with this is how is the distribution? How does the data analyze and chew this kind of like at what funding stage Tampere-based companies are at the moment?
Yeah, I would recall that we had about 15% in the stage of pre-seed, and then combined late seed and Series A, it was something around 20%, and yeah, we had something like 30% of companies who are not looking for funding at all. So maybe want to raise that point as well, actually, that still, this is quite much happening. Like, even though we are looking and we are talking so much about the companies who are looking for the risk funding, but there is 1/3 of the companies who are not currently looking for it, and there are always some good arguments about like why some companies want to do that, why they want to go for the bootstrapping strategy. Maybe they have good income already. They might have R&D funding, but there is always a side or a question that are they still maybe a little bit too risk averse, or are they just waiting for the right time, or things like that. So that's what is showing as well. But I would definitely like to highlight that the ones who are looking for Series A, that's probably like I have actually not had checked the full funding round information of Tampere of last year, like which funding rounds were specifically announced last year. I don't know that information actually at the moment, but it seems that we have actually a lot of companies who are looking for the next round, and can't remember actually now the exact number, but 50% at least of companies who are actually that I can recall 50 companies who are actually having an active funding round. And let's see, are we going to get 50 funding rounds for this year?
Yeah,
it's a huge expectation. So you might always think that not every company will get a funding round, but maybe our perspective should be here that as much as they should deserve should get a one.
And considering the kind of like the total number of startups, that 50 number is quite huge. It is a significant number in the startup landscape. So that also tells something. It's going to be interesting to follow this year. What's going to happen?
It is about 25% of all of those companies
it is pretty
actively looking for the round as we speak.
How do you see this kind of like a kind of growth readiness or maturity of the Tampere-based companies? Do you have any insights or thoughts about like how does this compare on a national level of with some of the other cases you studied or you've seen reports? and can be nationally, but can you you might even have an international point of view, maybe European or Nordic?
Yeah, there's something actually that I can promise that will come even more to the public, that when we will combine the data with the different cities. I told you that I've been doing the studies now with 6 cities. Let's mention especially Turku and Espoo from there, like they are quite recent cases. So yeah, you can see some differences clearly. Let's try to simplify it. With Espoo, you can clearly see that the companies are quite actually also deep tech heavy in there. They might actually get into the market even a bit slower than other cities. But again, they have a lot of VC money in Helsinki capital region, so they might enjoy the good access to VC investors. The Helsinki capital founders might have quite VC ready or VC fit mindsets. That's something what I mentioned, that in Tampere we have like the 1/3 of the founders who are not seeking for risk funding. In Espoo, it's a bit lower number, so they are more maybe prone to take such a risk and go for the investor money. So there's a little difference in there, but and it's a proximity factor as well. That when the VCs are next to you, it's kind of easier to think about it, and that's maybe something what I've been really wondering around the years in Tampere region, because we don't have basically a local VC fund in here. So how much our founders are being educated still of that option? Like is that option like fully on the table? Or it's good to be independent, but again, like it's weighing. It has advantages, disadvantages to go for risk funding. We could talk about it a lot, but still those questions arise when I check the data sets, especially between Espoo and Tampere.
Yeah.
But again, the very good advantages of Tampere companies, you can clearly see that Tampere companies are making to the markets, accumulating from 50 to €500,000 of annual turnover revenue. That is all happening. But then again, the question comes when you approach to the Series A funding stage, like how many of those funding rounds are really being realized? And you asked about the stages still. So it's even more than 40% of startups who are between of that 50 to 500K of annual revenue, but still it was less than 20% of those who had got any major risk funding. So again, that correlates that a lot of startups are actually making their growth with their own money. Or okay, maybe they could have get some loan or some R&D funding, but they have not received any major risk funding. So there's a little gap of the revenue achieved and maybe the risk funding which has been allocated. So that's a peculiar question to watch more thoroughly.
Yeah, it's something to observe and follow up in the near future. Tommi, you mentioned something about the Tampere-based companies are going to the market. So they are. So where are they going? So which markets are we talking about? I mean, I understand that there's a tiny Tampere market and a small Finnish market, but if you look at it from an international scope, especially we hope that startups become more and more born global, right? So, but what are some of the current trends you see in your study regarding what's the international for Tampere-based companies?
Yeah, and again, actually, at this point, it's always good to remind that when I'm talking about the Tampere startup, a specific Tampere startup, there is no such thing, because you have so many different industries, technologies, different strategies. Every startup is a unique one. But again, when we have been doing statistical study and survey study and combining that information, so obviously then we can take some statistical conclusions. So that's good to say out loud at this point. But yeah, obviously when thinking again of the distribution of the target markets, we've been really curious to know of those, because again, per definition, the startup needs to be getting international. There needs to be a clear strategy for that, for its product service, which is innovative to get to the global markets. And it's really promising to see that about 20% of those startups actually in Tampere and many other cities, this is also actually one quick point to say as well, that actually startups in Finland seem to be quite similar per my metrics, even in different cities. Like I mentioned some clear differences we could see in the funding scene between Espoo and Tampere. But otherwise, actually, with these internationalization targets, actually, it's so fun to see. But that actually proves to me that I have found the startups in every city. They are actually thinking quite alike. But again, coming to the results, so this is probably no big surprise then over the years. The markets which are close to us geographically and culturally, the European markets, Sweden, the Nordic markets, Germany and UK, they are topping my surveys in every city every year, even more than 50%, around 60% even to Sweden, to Germany. Which companies are aiming at. This is about the intention. I have not actually really asked exactly like what kind of operation have you been doing in there. But in the near future, and something which probably is kind of interesting question that like what has happened in the US markets, it's still actually really high. Like there was almost no change from last year to this year, even in Tampere. So, but okay, there's probably a good reasoning for it, because startups are not actually affected by the tariffs, which might be. So digital software services are out of that regulation, which is probably good. But then something which comes really as a positive sign to me is that even the Southern European markets, France, Spain, Italy, they are all around 25% of the startups. They reported themselves that they want to go into those Southern European markets. And yeah, we probably need to see again of the sub-segments a little bit more, like which companies are actually in there. But still, when you compare it to a basic SME company of a Finnish company, like how much of a talk we do have in Finland that we need more export activity in Finland and we need more growth mindedness. And the startups are having it all, but are they just having enough of the resources to fill in that vision? Like I would really love to see that spread out to happen. And when we study these startups even for longer, so we can see the results coming.
And that is indeed interesting, because that clearly goes to show that the mindset is there. The startup, whether their technical solution or product is mature enough, or if they're funded enough, or if they have staff resources enough, is another question. But the mindset of the founders is already there.
Yeah,
they are really looking for the export market, and I find that very, very important.
They are really global, and this is definitely not hype language, like some of the statistics or results that we can draw out of the studies, that 40% of Tampere startup companies are already speaking English with their company language. We have actually a good bunch of people who have come out of EU area to set up their company. Actually, that's also a growing number. I always want to mention this, that when we talk about immigration, we should talk more about immigration which are entrepreneurs, and especially startup entrepreneurs. That's the best immigration probably you could have in terms of economic growth. So those are actually also proofs of internationalization, which is happening as we speak, again, here in Tampere already.
And the important role they play in the startup ecosystem, not only in Tampere but on a national level, because the statistics already shows now the startups are key importance in the national economy as well. That they are becoming more and more important day by day.
Yeah. This is the notion I clearly want to say again, that the focus of my studies is that, as I mentioned in the beginning, they are young startups, less than 10 years old. Rather small still, less than 50 employees in those companies. So, but obviously, the end goal for each of the startup is to grow bigger. So then they are not anymore in my definition. Then they are not in my scope, and I can see those growth stories happening all the time. And that's the accumulation. That's the argument, like why you should invest into startups. That in a few years, 5 years, even it's a deep tech company, it might take even 10 years, even longer. The company takes on the growth journey, and then it becomes of a company with valuation of hundreds of millions of euros, with big rounds. We are enjoying actually the results of the early 2000s, the birth of those companies, of their success now. Aura, Volt, Volt has already made an exit, but still many of those companies from early 2010s, they are actually on this decade, they have been actually making the biggest funding rounds or exits and the major success. So even if we speak that startups are fast, it could still easily take 5 to 10 years to get into that major success cycle. So basically, the growth stories of 2030s are being as we speak.
Exactly, and that's why it is so important to talk about, when we talk about startups, that we don't talk about just some kind of a folks that have the buzz and just hustle around, but they do play a significant role. I mean, just think about
and it's a marathon.
Yeah.
So it still takes a lot of time to build a company like from scratch. But we need these from scratch companies more in Finland and more in EU area. I don't know if you have seen actually those visualizations where they compare US from the scratch companies to EU level from the scratch companies. Everybody, you should look for it. So basically, was it like less than 50 years old, over the last 50 years old, like which companies were born and what is the market value or their current revenue at the moment. And in US, you have a huge cloud of all companies of the digital era especially. And in Europe, you're quite a small cloud. So we should become more independent and more autonomous in Europe as well for our startup creation, for sure. It would give a lot of benefits actually for our society otherwise as well.
That's why it's important that also the politicians listens to this episode, because this also gives you something to think about and to chew on. When important decisions are made in Finland, but also on a European level, right? Because obviously we have plenty of listeners in Germany and everywhere.
Sure. And maybe the one argument as well, like maybe I didn't say it so clearly, but actually a majority of the startups in Finland, and actually nowadays even more globally, the trend has been actually clearly to get more B2B startups coming out, and let's say relatively speaking, less and less business to consumer startups. So it's not anymore so much of creating apps and all these kind of digital services. A lot of markets have actually been saturated already. So maybe one could even argue that you are not able to create this kind of marketplace startups anymore. Like that was the trend of 2010s. The trend for 2020s is clearly AI. We all understand that part, but then I would even argue that it's more building more complex systems, even based on the university research, complex systems, deep tech, dual use. Actually, the potential customer could be even the governments, and even for the dual use cases, like as we understood, there's a potential, there's supply of startups coming out now. I really, again, shout out. Hopefully there could be also enough of purchasing rights and power and let's say agile processes enough to get these innovations into use. I think these are the critical aspects for the decision makers to understand. The startups are not only for let's say consumer play, but they are more and more serious players to create new technologies and innovations. They are faster to do that actually than many corporations.
And this also goes to show that we need a little bit of patience also in the current startup landscape. It's a different one than from the app generation based startups, because these are heavily complex, technologically highly advanced solutions that these guys are building up currently, and it takes time. There's all kinds of regulations involved and all in that and everything. So when we even talk about what the startup landscape, it looks very different from the early 2000s.
The history has moved on.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's interesting from that perspective. But of course, startups need support. Tommi, different types of support do Tampere startups need currently at the most? So, I mean, of course, they all need money and clients and everything. But if you would highlight something that your survey shows.
Yeah, sure. Definitely would still like to highlight that you should still go to ask from the startups themselves, and they have their individual needs. And again, many of the needs cannot be categorized that easily. And they are very timely based. at one moment they might need something, and another point something else. But clearly, like when we want to simplify, so again, like what the startup requires money. And you can acquire money basically through 2 channels, like basically improving your sales. That's obviously should be the number one, and then getting some funding. So I think the sales part is actually something which is sometimes a bit overlooked. I understand the trickiness of the discussion that how much public sector can come to help the sales of startups. But again, there are still some ways to alleviate that path. So basically, especially when we are talking about business to government type of solutions, the government could be even more active purchasing body to get some innovations going on. There could be some test bed activities. There could be also some innovation budgets which the government could take into use locally, nationally. And even some of those instruments maybe could be combined with some of the funding instruments. Like, because now we have sometimes a little bit isolated ideas, which I'm thinking really about, that you have some R&D and I funding, some development funding, Business Finland, etc. Right? It's like another body, and then you have some other bodies who are running test beds and incubators and the service layer, and these 2 are not always communicating. This would be actually one of my thesis. I would like to combine here that, because startups they are requesting through this survey study that they would like to get more international expertise, sales expertise, and then more funding for internationalization. But again, I'm trying to look deeper than the survey answers, not kind of giving the blunt answer, but maybe what could be the solution, that there would need to be more coordinated sales. First, some domestic test platforms and test beds and combination of some purchasing power by the local players, because many of the startups still actually come to complain to me as well that we would still need the first customers to be from Finland. Like, even if you're having global mindset and you would like to be a born global startup, but if you don't have a singular client, especially the more complex systems you're building, if you don't have a singular client in your home country, the other persons from the other country might still come to ask to you that, why can't you sell to your own country, men and women? like what's wrong with you? Like, why you're getting abroad right away? So we should still see the value of the first customer. Actually, maybe that's my thesis here. Like, we should all think like how to get the first customer to be coming up more quickly, and maybe also actually corporations should have their play in this. I would love to see the Finnish corporations also allocating a little bit of their innovation budgets more to the open innovation game, not for the innovation theater, but more into systematic co-creation processes with startups, with fair game rules.
This is very interesting. You're kind of like touching upon also on the future development and future steps to be taken. If you think about, like, because my next question would have been actually about this, but let's try to formulate like a final kind of when we move towards the end. What would be some of, based on your survey and maybe your own insights, what would be some of the, let's say, 1 to 3 key actions to develop in the Startup.Tampere ecosystem for 2026?
Wow. Okay. So for the current year, it's a quick timeline.
Well, you could take a longer time span. Let's say the future, for the near future.
Yeah. Okay.
We don't have to specify a certain date, you know.
Sure. But okay. But let's take the easy ones. As I've been seeing through my studies, that it was about 40% of the startups who have actually already taken AI into some strategic development use. Obviously, that number should still get higher. I would argue, because if that's the mega trend which is affecting the whole startup ecosystem, like what are the rest of the 60% doing? So that's actually something which we should look upon, like that how the AI adoption rate would get higher, and not only, just when I say AI, not only using other companies' technologies and platforms, but hopefully even more creating their own AI native solutions. And again, I don't know like how to exactly to do it, but again, hopefully we should get more competent developers coming together and creating more of such companies. And I would hope to see some of the, let's say, resources going in the direction. Obviously, Tampere University has its spearhead GPT lab laboratory, which is concentrating on developing AI, researching it especially. So yeah, hopefully in partnership with them, there could be some good workshops and training programs coming out. More AI native startups. Maybe that would be my top number one. Then if I can be really asking some good challenges or good questions, like from the from what I really would love to see is that, as said, the deep tech born companies from the university, they are of high quality, but hopefully we could get a little bit more, let's say, some level of community play to happen. That not each of the startup which is making its spin-off from Tampere University, like hopefully they would not feel too isolated. That there would be a supporting community of all kinds of assets and services around them. I'm actually a community person by my heart. I've been active in Tampere startup entrepreneurial communities in so many ways, and this is something I would really see as a very purposeful act. That the companies who came out of Tampere University, let's say way back, they don't even have the relationship anymore. They become their own business entity. But we could those hopefully, let's say, the feeling that of those founders, that they would not leave their alma mater, their university just alone, but they would still feel the feeling that I want to give back something. I want to pay forward for the next generation. So we will have this more or less organic way of providing assistance, whether it's piece of advice or mentoring or getting to the advisory board or making even small angel investments. I think this cycle, probably I've said this wish already many times before, but we would have this kind of more organic way of the ecosystem building happening as well. That's the successful entrepreneurs, the serial entrepreneurs, they could always somehow reinvest some part of their energy and hopefully even some small piece of funding at least for the next generation. For deep techs and yeah, obviously it could be also student-led startups coming out.
Yeah,
I don't know.
That's excellent. I think
it feels already quite ample. Enough of wishes. I don't have the third one. I can. But
I think you touch upon on really important things there, and I think it really goes to show that building a first of all, building a startup is quite challenging. You know, it's not an easy game at all, because like, from the perspective of you have to first have quite a novel idea, find a good team. Maybe find a test pilot case where you can build it so that you can prove internationally you can do it. You need to make sure that your first customer will approve your idea solution. Your investor will believe in you. So it requires a lot from a relatively small team of entrepreneurs, let alone building a whole startup ecosystem.
Yeah,
it's an ever-changing environment, new trends coming in, new trends going out. You know, it's so it's a constantly changing system, and it's interesting to see something that I took from your this year's study is that the year has been, or the past few years, not only in Tampere but on a global level, has been quite interesting, if you want to put it mildly.
Very turbulent.
Yet, Tampere has not maybe grown quadrupled, but it's stable. It's not on a total decline either. It's very interesting to see. Of course, we can always do better, and I think we should do better.
Tampere is pretty resilient, and again, coming back to the key thesis here, that Tampere is pretty mature, like in so many terms. Like maybe a little bit recapping again. So we have so many serial entrepreneurs. Actually, we have quite seasoned entrepreneurs as well, like people who have a bit of older age. They have domain expertise, technology expertise. So basically. And they are creating actually the companies. You can clearly see they are like you could always criticize Finnish startup founders that they are not thinking enough of the market and customer needs. But clearly of Tampere startups, you can see that they are actually breaking into the market on a quite good ratio. But something which is really affecting is, as you say, the turbulent markets. Even actually the global startup investments scene has been changing. Because the geopolitical change is like, you could always say the startups are actually not being affected by any microeconomical or political changes. No, that's not actually really true. Like obviously startups are living in the same economic reality. And if let's say investments are getting more geopolitically restrained, that affects. Like if we are getting less of, let's say, US investments for startups to Finland, that affects as well. So then we would really need to understand like how to overcome that, how to compensate, like how we as Europeans and as Finnish and Tampereans can compensate on that thing.
And finally, sort of topping on that and thinking about the landscape changes, not only geopolitics, but also technological jumps or leaps. Think about AI, for example, how much it has changed and will change. Think about vibe coding, for example, or Lovable and all these solutions. Or then how do we not only in Tampere or Finland, but on a European level, how do we tackle what Mario Draghi was reporting some time ago regarding the heavily regulations around in Europe and how that's challenging for startups. So there's plenty of topics that we could continue. Unfortunately, Tommi, we can't today. Our time is about to end. But I want to thank you one more time for conducting the survey again and bringing out those results and taking the time to sit down and discuss a little bit with me about the current landscape and maybe some of the challenges we have and what could be some ideas to develop in the near future. But it's great to see that just like end on a sort of high or positive note. I think it's quite remarkable to see in your statistics the work that is being currently, for example, done at the university regarding the spinning out of the companies and the way they grow those companies and shout out and call to action to all the community builders out there to bring these kind of companies into the ecosystem because they will bring more value. Also bring the serial entrepreneurs in, the new fresh ideas, students going. I mean, you're being teaching in a course where you have 100 hungry entrepreneurs, potential entrepreneurs in the classroom. I've seen it myself. You did a great lecture, by the way. The point is that there is so much potential. The next steps will be then how do we sort of facilitate this and help the startups to support, whether it's the corporates, whether it's the public sector, whether it's the different service providers, whether it's the entrepreneurs themselves.
Tampere will manage. It's still ultimately a people business, and we just need to stick together and create a social cohesion and relation between each other, helping each other out. And here, if you still let me, like now I got the third kind of like.
There we go. We got the third one. Let's go.
I still wanted to give my third wish. So basically, actually, this came up in a good discussion actually yesterday with also one person from the Tampere University's community. So basically actually a response to your Draghi comment as well. So maybe actually one solution should be that, especially on the technology front, we should be having a little bit more of the sandboxing ideology of the regulation. Like, again, like how to do it, but basically with AI technology, for example, there could be also less of regulation for startups for maybe some specific period of time. Like we would need to be more innovative. Like if we are having more regulation coming all the time, like we are not able to compete on these terms. And again, maybe the other way around as well, like we need to be open for influences coming outside. Again, like even if I say that here in Tampere we need to stick together, but we need to be really having our doors and windows open to all over the world, getting the best talents here. Like whether they are coming to found their own startup or coming here as investors, or coming here as highly trained professionals to work for the startup. So all of those paths, again, that's so essential that our startup ecosystem is having more of that gravity of international people coming here. And that's why we're speaking in English here.
Yeah, exactly. Excellent. That's a good to end on that note. Tommi, many thanks for your valuable time to sit down and discuss this year's survey, and I hope everyone who is interested in these topics will find it useful to read through the report, maybe be in contact with Tommi for further questions, and shout out to all the cities and everyone who's been doing their own surveys as well. I think it's very important and valuable for the whole Finnish startup ecosystem, and best of luck for all the entrepreneurs and ecosystem builders out there. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for your support.
Thanks.